Hello, everyone. Give this just a minute for people to come on. All right. I don't want to wait too long. I'll get going as people sort of join on. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Glossy's weekly LinkedIn Beauty Debrief. I'm Lexi Lebsack, West Coast correspondent here at Glossy, and I'm here with my colleagues Tatiana Pyle, managing editor, Sophia Zveglinska, Glossy's international reporter, and our social media lead, Courtney Marabella. If you tune in weekly, you know that we switch up the format on this regularly, and today we'll be diving into some beauty industry news. There were just too many stories to pick one, and we have so much to talk about today. We only have 30 minutes, so I'll go ahead and jump in here. So this week at Glossy, we reported on the continued growth of the fragrance category, which is more and more bifurcated between entry-level price point products and prestige sales. We'll also be chatting about a new beauty launch targeting women over 40, which is a subset of shoppers in which there lies this big opportunity for brands and marketers right now. And we'll learn about a new loyalty program at Ulta Beauty. But let's go ahead and start with what I would say is one of the biggest controversies happening now in beauty. Tatiana, I know you've been following the story with Euphoria, and I know we all have our opinions. I know I have my opinions. Do you want to kick things off and kind of give us a little background on what is going on over at Euphoria?
Yeah, oh man, this Euphoria story truly is a sad case in a brand that, was so exciting and so buzzy that just didn't get it right. So for context, Euphoria launched in 2021, and they came at a time when we were in the pandemic. TikTok was beginning to blow up, and they had this viral blush that applied green, but really turned a different color based off your skin tone. It was really exciting, kind of new and innovative to the market. So naturally, it created a lot of buzz for the brand. They launched an extended shade of foundation in October, and they began to receive some initial backlash for not having an expansive foundation shade collection. So in response to that backlash, this past March, they launched an extension of that extension, including 10 more shades, which also has that 600 foundation, which has really received a lot of that core criticism. Really, people are just very frustrated with the brand because, number one, they felt that this foundation shade collection that they dropped in October wasn't inclusive of deeper, darker skin tones. And when they say inclusive of deeper, darker skin tones, they were really talking about those undertones that are nuanced, that makes it inclusive. So when they dropped this extension this past March, people were even more frustrated because the last color in that collection, that 600 tone, was black. And, I'm no scientist, and nor am I a genealogist, so I'm not quite sure if a deep, dark black skin tone actually exists. I know there are undertones that make dark brown, but that shade is just essentially tar, like it's tar black, or the color of like paint. So this really popular influencer, did a swatch, and she explained, why it's extremely problematic. And I think as of right now, Euphoria still has not responded to that popular influencers' critiques. So people are just extremely frustrated because, in the industry, there has been a lot of controversy and frustrations because brands have not been super inclusive of deeper, darker skin tones, which is why beauty brands like Fenty and Danessa Myricks have succeeded, because they've been extremely inclusive and very thoughtful and intentional about including those darker shades. So it's a really tragic tale of a brand that was once super buzzy. Everyone was extremely excited about it, that just didn't get it right. There's multiple things here at play. The quick turnaround, putting out an extension of shades that weren't really as intentional as they should have been in terms of swatching and testing us on multiple darker shades. And then also the brand's lack of response to consumers' criticism. The founder has had, March was 2 months ago almost now. The founder has had 2 months to respond to these critiques, and she has not said anything. So there's a few things at play here, and I think overall it's just a really unfortunate situation.
Yeah, I agree. I remember when Fenty was getting a lot of attention for their vast range, the 40 shades that they launched. And I remember when, this was getting a lot of attention, and cosmetic chemists and scientists were sort of online talking about this and discussing the nuance of adding undertones and adding shades. And I remember even seeing something where someone dove into different products that were out there and realized that a lot of manufacturers and chemists were basically, just like you're saying, Tatiana, just kind of like dumping darker color into a formula in the same way that like a bra might, instead of being remolded or reworked for like a different size out of like, the ABC that, we tend to see, they're just kind of like mocked up. So they don't really fit properly, and the shades don't really work properly. So it really is. I agree with you. It's so sad and unfortunate that it went down like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think the reality is, historically, makeup has not been a super inclusive category. So I think there is, a lot of nuance and a lot of time that should be taken into account when creating vast amount of shades, especially when the founder, though she is a woman of color, she doesn't have deeper, darker skin. So I think, it was just an oversight. And I think it's okay to acknowledge that. Founders mess up sometimes. And I really think, the way that she's handled the situation has really made the outcome much worse than it actually probably could have been in the beginning. If she just would have taken maybe a year or 6 months to come out with more inclusive shades, done more testing, involved more people of color, I think the response that she would have received would have been completely different than it is now.
Yeah. I would also I watched some of the videos of her trying to unsuccessfully find even a model that the shade worked on. I watched a few TikTok videos where she had a casting. No one came with dark enough skin. She looked around for models. She wasn't able to find anyone. She was running through a mall trying to find anyone, a real person who could potentially match this shade. And I kind of just go back to this idea of like the sunk cost fallacy. I feel like, sometimes it'll feel like you've already put so much money, so much effort, so many resources into something that like you have to make it work. But I feel like this was one of those times where someone should have been like, okay, we tried. This wasn't the path. Let's pivot.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, I'm kind of interested because obviously I'm not from the beauty space as much, but in terms of that product development side of things, I know that a lot of the shade ranges can be quite standardized if you're going to the same manufacturer as maybe other brands that, you go through and you're like, okay, well, I'd like to have this range of brand shades. So I'm wondering, in this case, was it just, I guess, a lack of like detail orientation to kind of focus on some of those darker shades? So, I mean, you test this on anyone. Like, there's no way that would have been a passing shade at all for any customer.
Yeah, Tatiana, you might know better than me, but I mean, we don't know. That's the crazy thing right now is we don't really know what the process was like. I know that like the critics online are saying that it was not properly made because there aren't any undertone colors in there. There's nothing that makes it look like skin. But I don't know. It's like with Tatiana, exactly what you're saying. It's like, we want to hear from them. Where's Mark Cuban? Where's Mark Cuban?
Right. And I actually, I'm sorry, Lexi. I forgot to add this additional component. So there is an ambassador program that she does have on one of those community platforms, and there was a screenshot that was taken and sent on TikTok and shared on TikTok where she essentially tried to explain what was happening. And she also asked people who were a part of that ambassador program to comment under that really popular influencers, and I don't want to mispronounce her name, but her last name is George, commenting under her posts saying that the deep, dark black shade was supposed to be a mixing shade. It's supposed to be mixed with other complexions in the collection to actually produce a proper skin tone color. But again, it's kind of like what you were saying. There are no undertones in that shade. It's literally just the color black. And no one's skin is just the color black. There is undertones, whether it be red, yellow, neutral. So yeah, that was another component that really rubbed people the wrong way. Instead of just addressing it publicly and talking through, the strategy, the development, what's next, she asked her ambassadors to comment under the influencer's page.
Interesting. I mean, I've heard of mixed in shades for concealers and especially like undertone shades, but I don't think I've ever heard of that for foundation, especially when it's a darker like tone.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that either, unless it's for costume, not for everyday use.
Yeah, exactly. So if it's a mixed in shade, that means you have to buy 2 of the Euphoria tints foundations, or it's like you're mixing it into a foundation you already have, or your moisturizer?
Yeah, I think the concept from her was to use that black to mix with lighter browns to produce variations of brown.
Interesting. Well, if anyone listening here has any thoughts or opinions, definitely raise your hand. There's a little button where you can react. We'd love to talk to you, love to bring you on stage to hear your thoughts. Yeah, I think this is an interesting one. I also think that there is just such a fast rise of this company. Like, we know that she went on Shark Tank. We know she got a deal with Mark Cuban. This is obviously all happened very fast. I think very few founders find themselves in a situation where they launch and a couple years later they're in Ulta and they have all of this attention and they are becoming a conversation piece within the beauty industry. So certainly can't be easy, but definitely something to learn there. And hopefully we hear from them soon. We want to hear from Euphoria.
Yeah, I agree. And as like you said earlier, I'm really interested in the pressures from investors and even her retail partners that she probably also was experiencing in order to feel that urgency to come out with that expanded shade range. Because I really do think as consumers, if we want really good products, I think they're okay with waiting. So there's the other side of the story too. As a new founder, with this really exciting brand, what are those pressures that you're experiencing to feel the need to come out with an expansion in 3 months?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, well, hopefully there's some resolution there soon, and hopefully we can hear from the team at Euphoria. So speaking of Ulta Beauty, we have another story that I want to dive into. I'm curious what's going on over at Ulta Beauty this week. Sophia, I know you have a new story just live today, a few hours ago, about a new loyalty program, right?
Yeah, exactly. So obviously in terms of my coverage, I focus a lot on gamification and the innovation kind of sector. So I spoke to both Ulta and to the partner that they're working with, so the gamified loyalty program company called Hang. And they've worked with a number of brands before. I believe ASICS is one of theirs that they've worked with. And it's kind of focused on making a new version of the loyalty program. So something that is gamified. So for example, you get rewarded for insights, you get rewarded for interactions. That particular game, which is called Glam Explorer, features 42 mini games. So things like Word of the Day, which is basically the Ulta's version of Wordle, 21 questions, as well as like time challenges and quests. So thinking about that kind of gaming opportunity for cosmetics customers and obviously integrating rewards into that as well. So you get discounts and rewards for interacting and for winning, the games. I think it's a really interesting opportunity because obviously, Ulta's got one of the biggest membership programs in the US. I believe they have 43 million members in their loyalty program. And I think that right now, they're thinking about what that next stage of the loyalty program is. Is there a development that would bring more engagement, especially into loyalty programs? Because a lot of the times, people would have a single purchase and maybe they'll collect some points, but I don't think it's something that they continuously engage in. But obviously, with the growth of like couponing and like other actions where you're looking at discounts almost as like a game, you can actually extend that into a gamified concept. So they basically have been pioneering this for 8 months now, and they've got some great results. Just bringing a couple of those up. So I think they've had over 68,000 quest completions and a median of 11 minutes per session. So I think you're looking at data that you just wouldn't get in a typical membership program where people would just look up what their point status is, maybe check out the reward section, but not too much further. And it's really interesting because I've covered the kind of mobile gaming space before on the fashion side of things. And that is actually a space where female customers greatly outweigh male ones. And obviously with Ulta being mainly cosmetics, you're looking at a vastly female audience. So I think there's a big correlation there between mobile gaming and also, the cosmetic space.
So cool. So do we think that this beta, this like soft launch is going to become a permanent program at Ulta?
I think so. I think this is where like loyalty programs are heading. A lot of the times when you're looking at innovation across the company, like I don't think you think about the membership kind of qualities that you'd have within one of these loyalty programs. So obviously you're looking at customers who are continuously engaged, especially among those kind of top spenders or people who have amassed the biggest amount of points. So they're really they care about the brand, whether that's a retailer or a brand. I think it gives up a new opportunity to make that loyalty even bigger by integrating that gamified kind of element and looking at the game potentials. If you look at, video gaming or something, like that's something where the audience is very, very loyal. Like they love those games. So integrating commerce into that by offering kind of in-game rewards is something that hasn't really been done before that much. And it's a very interesting opportunity for retailers who would obviously have access to a lot of different brand products. And I think it offers a lot of opportunities for advertising, for placement. There could be very big revenue opportunities there, I think, for Ulta.
Wow. And this might be a silly question. I'm not really a gamer, but is there a component, pardon my question, is there a component where the person who's playing the game is like in a Sephora playing and like interacting within the like retail environment in any way? Or is this really just kind of like a loyalty thing, through the program?
Yeah, it's just loyalty at the moment, but that would be a really interesting component. I know that Neha, who heads up Obsess, who've done a couple of these like e-com experience for brands, and I think for beauty brands, they've worked with Charlotte Tilbury on basically like an e-store experience. So you get to walk around the store and look at products in a digital store environment. So that's something a little bit different. This one kind of is more comparable to Wordle or the games that you've seen on LinkedIn, for example. So it's just like a single platform thing where you would have, like a couple of like Wordle games, for example, or like the 21 questions about like beauty products. And then you'd kind of look at that. But I think there's a lot of opportunity for, other kind of more integrated experiences. And you can see that Ulta's already kind of gone into, digital try-on, for example. It's got like a service where you can try on makeup, for example. So I think it's looking at those opportunities there. And it might still look at some of those kind of digital store possibilities as well.
Very cool. Definitely an interesting space and one that seems like there's so much opportunity in.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a growing area for beauty as well, because it's quite an interesting area where you're thinking about experiences for something that is mainly, you can't really go into a digital environment and try on like a specific texture of a face cream or a foundation. But it is something that offers a lot of like brand building opportunities. So you can build out, you know, what does the brand universe look like beyond the product in the digital space?
Yeah, very cool. I think we have one question from Kimberly. You are able to speak if you have a question. But you are on mute if you're talking. Oh, I think we lost her. Kimberly, if you come back. Oh, wait. Here we go. The power of the LinkedIn chat. Okay, Kimberly, you're back up.
I'm so sorry.
No, fine.
I just had a quick question. How can brands, beauty brands, and the other brands in Ulta, how can they leverage this program to boost visibility or boost sales? Did they talk about that?
No, so at the moment, not yet, because it is a closed program. So it's something that Ulta is testing themselves within the current assortment of brands that they have. I think that in terms of like future partnerships, brands will be able to connect with Hang, who are the kind of service providers for this, with Ulta directly to potentially sign up for future activations. Because by the looks of it and by the results that they've received, this isn't something that is just going to be a one-off kind of activation. I'm hoping that it's something that they will actually integrate alongside their existing membership offering.
Awesome, because it sounds really cool.
Yeah, it's a really fun thing. And honestly, like the potential for like female customers within mobile gaming is really, really big. And I think a lot of brands are unaware of the opportunity then.
For sure. And in my past life working with brands, the loyalty program through Ulta was one of the biggest return on investments. Besides like co-ops or pay to play or anything like that, we saw a lot of great results from tapping into the loyalty programs and the 5x points and the 2x points. So this will probably work really well for brands if they figure out that end of it.
Yeah, of course. And the CEO of Hang that I spoke to kind of already talked about the revenue opportunities there and how that can still be almost revenue boosting for the brands. They can kind of manage it on the back end, so they understand, for example, how many people are winning a game per day or per week. So they can always kind of manage that from the brand or from Ulta's side of things. But I think that that gamification element was obviously already there since you've been offering that 2x points or like 5x points features. So I think it's just basically an upgrade on that and a wider kind of integration focus on engagement.
For sure. And it also offers great insights to what people are spending their points on.
Yeah, exactly. They did speak about the data opportunity there. And obviously, if those partnerships are existing with brands and they have a specific product, I think that there will be, if that's something that's offered through a reward, that would be a very specific data point. And you'd be able to see a lot more kind of customer information based on what they're interacting with. I think they did speak about potentially using AI for personalization as well. So customizing products based on existing purchases, but also on site interaction.
Very cool.
Nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kimberly. All right, and thanks, Sophia. So exciting. Then definitely a space we'll all continue watching here. So we have a few more minutes. I want to chat really quickly because I'm very curious, Tatiana, Sophia, and anyone listening, what your thoughts are on this. But I want to chat really quickly about a new launch for women over 40. So as millennials and Gen Xers are getting older, we're seeing a shift in the market towards more mature women. So that's, women between 40 and on, maybe 50 on, sort of depends on who you ask. But for reference, millennials are right now between the ages of about 28 and 43, and Gen X is right now mid-40s to approaching 60. So Brooke Shields, she is the latest celebrity founder. She's going to turn 59 this year, and she is the very top of that Gen Xer bucket. And she announced recently that she's launching a hair care line for women over 40 called Commence. She developed the line using insights from a content platform that she launched in the pandemic called Beginning is Now. which is a pretty classic celebrity beauty line origin story. A lot of celebrities build community first. They kind of test out ideas. But the site apparently did well, and she told Women's Wear Daily that she has a community that is 1 million strong, which is huge. So the site was basically rebranded to Commence. It will go up as DTC in the beginning of June. There will be 8 products by end of year, which will be hair care, and maybe they'll get into fragrance a little bit. She tapped the former lead over at Victoria's Secret Pink named Denise Landman. And yeah, I'm curious what you guys think. I know we're seeing more and more marketing towards women over 40. We know that from Mintel data that they do spend more than younger shoppers, especially in hair care. And we see brands like Laura Geller, L'Oreal, Beauty Stat, Bobbi Brown's Jones Road finding a lot of success here marketing towards mature women. There's also been a couple headlines recently talking all about this category and all of the opportunity. But yeah, curious. Do we think that this Brooke Shields line will be able to cut through all of the noise?
It's interesting to see a kind of celebrity-backed hair care line kind of focused on the more mature woman. I know that when I was chairing the Glossy Leaders dinner in the UK, there was a brand there called And Begin, which is kind of focused on prescription strength skincare for mature skin, and they kind of talk about it as being the midlife stage. So I think they're very focused on that kind of midlife customer. And it seems like a kind of growing opportunity. If you think about, the revenues kind of driving that sector, it's someone who can probably spend a little bit more on cosmetics, on hair care. So it makes for a good kind of revenue driver, and also, I think, a more subtle approach to marketing skincare as well. I don't think it's quite as flashy as something that you'd market for 20-year-olds.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like the hair care, it makes a lot of sense. And I feel like if we look at the marketplace a little bit, I can't think of too many things that are really geared towards women over 40. And of course, we saw Tracee Ellis Ross, the celebrity hair care line, the celebrity behind hair care line Pattern. She's having a ton of success here. I just hear so many good things about that line, and I know it's doing well. Yeah, so it's like there certainly are roadmaps for celebrity hairlines that are very successful. Curious if anyone listening has any thoughts. We'd love to bring you to the stage to talk about it. And then please raise your hand if you have a question. But and then I think the last story that I kind of wanted to touch on, but we are running a little bit short on time here, is the continued growth of the fragrance category. So Circana reported that U.S. prestige fragrance was the fastest growing beauty category in Q1 of this year, based on sales revenue, which was up 13% year over year. We did a lot of reporting on this. It turns out that consumers are simultaneously trading up and trading down when it comes to fragrances. So we're seeing this bifurcated market between really approachable, low price point alternatives like body sprays, private label mass scents, prestige mini sizes, and dupes. And then, of course, also growth in prestige offerings, but there's also certainly a lot of new releases coming out that I think are also really interesting. And then the last thing I'll kind of lead us here with, maybe we can discuss, is that younger shoppers continue to show their buying power within fragrance. Last data point is that prestige fragrance sales within households making more than $100,000 per year with children in the home grew at twice the rate compared to households without kids, according to Circana's receipt-based checkout data. So super fascinating. We're seeing Gen Z kids who are still in their parents' home, Gen Alpha kids who are very young right now, 14, 15 at the top, I think, driving a lot of these fragrance sales, which I think is very fascinating.
That's really interesting. I've actually heard a lot about kind of building fragrance wardrobes and like having that kind of collection of scents that, you can kind of pick from depending on mood. And I think there's a lot of kind of mood-driven fragrance launches, whether that is I think it was Charlotte Tilbury who launched fragrance recently.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think that was mostly driven by like moods, and you see that already in like candle sales, for example. So I'm wondering if that's kind of shifted over now to fragrance and kind of capturing certain moods and having that diversity of fragrance options. And I have a collection of like a whole little bag of mini sample size perfumes that I try on. So I think it's definitely something that you probably see a lot with, other 20-year-olds or 20-somethings, where you have a number of scents that you kind of go through depending on your mood. And obviously that gives a lot of opportunities for brands to market the product slightly differently, to have that collection of mini samples, for example. I think that that's been quite a big driver for a lot of brands, like having those prestige minis that they can repackage and sell in a different way.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sophia. I think in the conversations I've had with fragrance founders, one of the things that they all say is that there has been just a shift in consumers' interests in terms of, what they're shopping for. They're looking for scents beyond just one traditional scent. They really want a larger, more robust wardrobe. They want mood-driven fragrances, like you said. They're looking for multiple options for, whether that be something that's more, excuse me, a perfume or perfume mists or body spray or scented body oil. There's just so many options out there. And I think that consumers are really interested in more exploratory as well. They're just trying new things. And it's been interesting. Even, I think it was last year or the year before last, there was this trend that was bubbling up on TikTok about pheromone-based scents, how people were looking for, whether or not you agree that pheromones attract, different things. There were a lot of brands that were kind of experimenting in that space as well. So it's been quite interesting to see. And I think, because of the rise in fragrance, we've also been seeing a bunch of luxury brands kind of getting back into that space as well, whether that be with relaunches or new launches. So yeah, I think fragrance is such an interesting space and a lot of people are playing around in it. We have niche fragrances, we have clean fragrances that are now a thing. So I'm very curious to watch, how this space is going to evolve within the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's also quite interesting how there's been like a shift away from alcohol-based like fragrances. I know that there's more exploration of like oils and like water-based scents. So I'm wondering, in terms of that fragrance category, maybe it was just standardized for a really long time. And now there's so many different options. You see other kind of fragrance brands like Byredo going into hair care, or Rio de Janeiro with like the body mists. I think there's like an opportunity for fragrance expansion across like a lot of different brands that have already made scent kind of a key component of their products. I think it makes for a very natural progression for them to kind of add in those products as an extension of those scents, because like customers tend to be very loyal with those. And if it's something a little bit more subtle, then it's also something that can be quite a big driver, or like, like it was last year with all of the different like sweet gourmand scents that were blowing up on TikTok as well.
Yeah, great insights here. I feel like you guys are both so right. There's so many cool things coming out, so many innovations coming out, and just a completely different way of thinking about fragrance. Yeah, so fascinating. Well, thank you all for joining us today. We're running short on time here, but head over to Glossy. We have more coverage on the fragrance category sales spike and other really amazing stories this week. We did a dive into how Laneige is taking on Temu counterfeiters. Tatiana has a great piece up today about Isamaya French and a new collaboration on these very cool face tools with Face Gym. So lots of great content. Head over to Glossy, and thank you so much for joining us today. We're here every Wednesday at this time discussing the latest in beauty, and we hope that you join us again soon. All right. Thank you so much.
Bye.